I revolted in spirit against the customs of society and the laws of the state that crushed my aspirations and debarred me from the pursuit of almost every object worthy of an intelligent, rational mind. Emily Collins.
Husband and wife are one, and that one is the husband. William Blackstone, Commentaries.
What was life like for American women in the early 1800s? As a rule, women could not vote. They had no rights to their property or children, no voice in the laws that governed them. But much depended on where they lived and how much money they had. Out west, women forged trails alongside men, roped cattle, built cabins, hunted for food. Men appreciated their independent spirits because it helped make survival possible in the frontier. These women had more say in local government than most other American women.
Farm women had always had more of a say in their communities than urban women had, partly because women had more access to power out west, that they were important pioneers, that they were visible in the society in different ways.
They were among the first in the country to win the right to vote in national elections. In the slave South, on the other hand, men ruled. Women remained in traditional roles longer than in other places. Industrial life came slower to the South. Women were less likely to question the social structure. In the North, many middle-class women viewed their place as caretaker of the home and family as having religious significance. Dozens of advice books told women how they should dress, behave, decorate their home, and care for their children to please their husbands and God. Dress was uncomfortable, restrictive, and even unhealthy.
Women had become a kind of symbol for the status of the men in their lives. So if you could afford to have a wife who wore a corset, it meant that she didn't have to move around a lot. She didn't have to do any manual labor. She didn't have to clean up after herself. She was a woman of leisure.
Of all Americans, African American women, free or slave, had the fewest rights. They were, in fact, defined in a separate category of existence altogether.
The Women's Rights Convention at Seneca Falls was the first time that a group of women and men had gotten together in public to discuss women's rights.
They discussed women's grievances about property, access to education and professional careers, and the low status of women in most churches.
The right to vote was the most controversial thing they asked for.
A right which they complained was given to the most ignorant and degraded men. They wrote a document called the Declaration of Sentiments, using the style and format of the Declaration of Independence.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights.
It was a set of grievances that women had worked over and figured out, a set of things they felt they were denied, rights they didn't have, property rights, voting rights, and other related rights. And that was the declaration that they issued at the end of the convention.
3 years later, one of the sponsors of the Seneca Falls Convention, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, would meet the other great leader of the women's suffrage movement, Susan B. Anthony of Rochester, New York. In 1851, Anthony and Stanton joined forces. Together, women formed associations to fight more effectively for women's rights, challenging everything from restrictive fashions to suffering imprisonment for illegal voting.
Women were not allowed to vote. And Anthony challenged this as a property holder and said, I have a right to vote, and actually cast a ballot for which she got cast in jail.
We may, with no more propriety, assume to govern women than they might assume to govern us. Samuel May, 1846.
Some men joined the cause, while some women scorned it. It was here, in America's outdated and at times inhumane orphanages, insane asylums, and prisons, that American women were leading the crusade to reform the nation.